So like Daled Amud Beis 94b. We're about a third from the bottom. The line begins with the word v'yase, and the fifth word is v'hoya. It's after a little samach in parentheses. The first word in the line is v'yase. Here, v'hoya. So we're discussing the downfall of Sanhedrin and the prophecies that led to that. The prophecies of two sides of the coin, the prophecies of Sanhedrin's success in the northern kingdom, and then the prophecies of his lack of success, or his doom, in his attempt to attack the southern kingdom of Chizkiyahu, who is king of the southern kingdom of Israel. Judah versus Israel. Southern kingdom, Judah, northern kingdom, Israel. So the prophecy reads as follows. This is Isaiah 10:27. Will be on that day when Sanhedrin attempts to attack the south, the kingdom of Judah under Sanhedrin. Yasser sivle mal shichmacha. I will remove, says God, the yoke, the oppression from your shoulder. Va'olei, and the yoke, mal tzavarecha, and the mal shichmacha is like your neck, and then the yoke from your shoulder. V'chayvel oil, and the yoke of the strap. Mipnei shemen, because of the fatness. That's the verse. Meaning you, Chizkiah, and your people are fat, as in healthy, spiritually and physically, I suppose. So we'll describe in a second the spiritual strength. And because of that, God will remove the yoke of Sanhedrin after his success in the north. His unfortunate success in the north. So Rabbi Nafcha explains the meaning of the verse, which says that God's going to remove the yoke or the strap from the fatness of your kingdom. What's this fatness? What's shimei? Mipnei shaman. So it says Rabbi Nafcha, Chayvel oil Sanhedrin, the strap of the yoke of oppression of Sanhedrin, will be removed Mipnei shmana shel Chizkiyahu, because of the oil of Chizkiyahu. What oil? Shayadolek batik nesis batim medrashos, that were burning in the synagogues and in the study halls throughout his kingdom. And if there's oil burning, it means people were studying there at night, not just during the day. They didn't use electricity for their daylight. They tried to use as much of the actual sunlight as possible, conserve energy. So if there was oil burning, it meant they were learning at night as well. Interestingly, I don't know if you can be medayik here, I don't know if you can be very precise in the wording here, but it's just interesting to note that the Mishnah says batik nesiyas, in addition to batim medrashos. Mentioned synagogues in addition to study halls. Study halls we know existed all the way back to the times of Joshua, when the Jews first entered the land of Israel, and even before that in the desert to some degree. Allah Shal Moshe, Moshe's tent was a kind of bais medrash, was a kind of study hall.
Shem and Ever?
Yeah, that's
way back.
That's pre-Jewish identity, but yeah, it goes. I mean, the study hall goes way back, but the synagogue is a little bit of a discussion as to exactly when it started. When did synagogue start? Because prayer, to a large degree, is replacement for the offerings in the temple, which means to a large degree, during the time of the temple, when there are actual offerings, the synagogue is somewhat obsolete, or if not obsolete, at least it takes a back seat. Right? Jewish identity didn't revolve around the synagogue during temple times as it does today. It revolved around the temple. That's where Jewish action was. Even if you lived in a small town way out of Jerusalem, a big part of your Judaism was 3 times a year, or more, at least 3 times a year, if not more, traveling to the temple and doing your karbanos, doing your offerings, etc. But it's interesting here to note that even in times of Chizkiah, which means even in times of the first temple, the Gemara mentions batik nesiyas. I don't know if you're like what the rules are and if you're allowed to be medayik, if you're allowed to be so precise in the language, because the Gemara mentions batik nesiyas means it was actual shuls then, but I'm just noting that it's here.
Do we know whether people prayed 3 times a day with a minyan during temple times?
It's hard for me to say that there was a minyan. Certainly during first temple period, before the Sanhedrin enacted all this stuff, before the Anshe Knesset Gadol, enacted all this stuff. But praying 3 times a day, the Gemara in Bracha says that there's two times in history for when these things were founded. Right? One opinion says that they were founded by Shachris, by Avraham, Mincha by Yitzchak, and Yaakov Arvis, which means that the 3 prayers already established pre giving of the Torah. And then the other opinion says it's in replacement for the offerings. So, historically, how do these things work? So it's a combination of both, right? In other words, there was some sort of prayer 3 times a day before, but not as structured as it was now, because the structure that we have is created by the Knesset Gdola because there is no temple. So if you had a minyan the way we did, I doubt it. Did people pray 3 times a day? Probably.
But maybe individually?
Maybe individually, yeah. Or certainly not as structured with a siddur like we have. That's what I'm saying. I don't think they would be doing a minyan because we didn't have the structure of the siddur. The structure of the siddur comes much later.
What do you think they did on Shabbos? Do you think they took out a Torah and read it with a minyan?
Well, yeah, the reading of the Torah comes back from Moshe Rabbeinu.
Right.
First from Moshe, then from Ezra.
So they would
but
gather together on Shabbos?
They would gather together. There's even some indication of Rechav Shal Ir where they would gather in the street to read the Torah, but it's for fast days and some other occasions. So reading the Torah, yes. I suppose they had blessings the way we do. I don't know exactly, but the structured siddur that we have came much later. That's for sure. So
were there about 3 million people in the desert?
Something like that, yeah.
Who could they hear?
Hear who?
Moshe when he was reading the Torah.
He wasn't the only one. There would have been other people reading the Torah. Also, the Torah wasn't fully written yet, right? Because the Torah is still being developed.
Yeah.
The Torah is first written at the end of Moshe's life, but Moshe enacted this decree that the Torah should be read. What is it? Once every 3 days? Was that from? It's from Moshe Rabbeinu. And then Ezra added. He added a whole bunch of takanas also related to that. I'm missing some details about the reading of the Torah, but it certainly goes back to Moshe Rabbeinu's time. Not necessarily that he did it, but that he enacted that it should be done in the future. At any rate, so exactly what synagogues looked like pre-temple destruction, certainly during the first temple, is not exactly clear. But I'm just noting that the Gemara says here that there were lights, candles burning in the study halls and the synagogues in the time of Chizkiah. It's just interesting to note, that's all. But the Gemara is making note that they existed then. So, okay. So the Gemara is basically commenting that the yoke of Sanhedrin wasn't successful in the southern kingdom of Chizkiah because the candle was burning in the study halls and the synagogues as they were being used at nighttime. So Ma'asa, what did he do that made him so successful in having candles burning in all these synagogues throughout his land, throughout his kingdom? So the Gemara now has some rather harsh words. I'm going to translate them literally and leave them to you to think about how you to interpret that, how to understand it. But certainly the literal interpretation is there, clear. He took a sword, stuck it into the ground at the entranceway to the study halls. V'Omar made an announcement. Anyone who's not involved in Torah study, Yitkar b'cherev zu, shall be essentially killed by this sword. I don't think it means that he's going to kill them. God forbid. I think it's kind of him saying, if you don't study Torah, there's a sword waiting by Sanhedrin ready to attack. The Gemara didn't say that explicitly, but that's what it seems to me. I don't think he means that he's going to put people to death if they don't study Torah. I think he means like Sanhedrin's on the way, so if you don't study Torah, there's a sword waiting, God forbid.
The Gemara says that what is you have the Sefer or the Sayef.
Yeah.
You have a choice, either we say the Sefer
The book or the sword.
The sword, yeah, similar to the Samach and the
Yeah.
Really?
Live by the Torah, die by the sword.
Yeah, exactly. The choice.
It's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
Where are you, in the middle of the double lines?
Middle of the wide set of lines. Yeah. The line begins with the word zu, and the second word is batku. That's where I am.
Zu batku.
Yeah. So b'cherev zu with his sword, period, or comma. Batku, they searched, they investigated. Midonvad Beersheva, from Dan to Beersheva, which I guess are extremes of the extreme borders of the southern kingdom.
No, the Dan is in the north, and Beersheba is in the south.
Right.
So actually, it's interesting. The Dan.
So I would be in the north, but okay.
It seems he has some influence even on the northern.
Yeah, that's interesting.
After the exile, maybe there was still Jews.
I thought Dan. That's why I thought Dan was a place, not Dan as in the tribe of Dan.
Yeah.
I just assumed it was a place because it was in the south, but it means extending into the north. That's pretty interesting. Okay, so we're done Beersheba, from Dan to Beersheba. Beersheba is all the way in the south. Motzu Amoretz, and they have not found one ignoramus. Meaning everybody was knowledgeable in Torah. To what degree, I don't know, but the Gemara now that would make sense actually, because the next comment is about the south specifically. And then we give us Va'ad and Tipras, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Tipras, and from Givat to Antipras, which are two extremes of the southern border. So I guess this is really in the south. Well, and they could not find Tinnik V'Tinoikis, a young boy or young girl, Ish Isha, a man or a woman, Shaloyu Bikin, that would not completely versed, fluent. The Hilchas Tumah V'Tara, and the laws of purity and impurity, which are very complicated, complex laws. So that's how intense and diligent Torah study was at the time, that a young child was fluent in the laws of purity and impurity. It's pretty incredible. And of that generation it states, the verse is Isaiah 7:21. It'll be in that day, Ish Eglas Bakar Ushtei Tzoin. Each person will have, or each person will be able to sustain a calf and 2 sheep. And I think, where is it? I think the point of the verse is that there was so much abundance, and because of that, and once I go, we'll read the next verse. It concludes it. So there's this verse number, which is quoted here, but then it says, etc. So the rest of the verse reads, which is not quoted here. So first, that a man shall nourish a young calf and 2 sheep, and it shall come to pass from the abundance of milk that they produce. He shall eat butter, for butter and honey shall everyone eat, everyone who remains in the midst of the land. Meaning to say that there was lots and lots of abundance of availability. And then the verse goes on to say, so it's 2 verses later. Right, there's the verse the Gemara quotes, it says, etc. Then I quoted the English. Now there's the next verse, which just reads, continues. It'll be on that day, on that same time, this generation when there was all these kids studying Torah. In any place that you shall find it. Sham, there will be Elef Geffen, Elef Kesef. There will be 1,000 vineyards, or 1,000 vines in a vineyard. The Elef Kesef, going for 1,000 gold coins, which means it's very expensive. The Shamar Velashis, but it'll be thorns and bristles. So what does this mean? Why are they all thorns? So explains the Gemara, even though 1,000 vines sells for 1,000 silver coins, which means it's very expensive, meaning to say that they could have made they could have made a very happy living. Market was in their favor. They could have easily sold their each vine basically is going for a full silver coin. I suppose that's expensive. I don't know what the market was back then, but it's implying that it's very expensive, and they could have made a good living. But nonetheless, the Shama Velashisia, nonetheless, it was still thorns. In other words, they did not indulge in this good market time and making lots of money because they were busy studying Torah, even though they had all this plenty. Okay. End comment to the Gemara from that generation, or from that angle of the generation, describing the intensity of Torah study with the sword implanted in the front of all the study halls, and thus all the study halls and all the synagogues had oil burning, and because of that shem and because of that oil, Sanhedrin wasn't successful. All right.
It must have been easy to study in those days, Torah.
Why?
They had no distractions. Didn't have cars, didn't have sports, didn't have football games to watch, baseball games, hockey games.
But they had lots of money to make.
Yeah, but
They still had lots of money to make.
they didn't have television,
Yeah.
didn't have radio. What did they have there?
Yeah, but they did have to work hard to get their food.
Yeah.
A lot of them had
They
to
couldn't
have
just spend
to-
$1 and buy a meal.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, let's go to Yakimona and buy something. They had to make their own
Yeah.
from scratch. So that was probably time consuming to do that.
Very.
Take care of animals. And
But it's interesting that
crops
there are like 3 options here. There's the sword, there's Torah, and there's wealth. It's all 3 of those available. Now that's what Gemara is just noting. I haven't fully developed this thought, but those are the 3 options, right? So, and they had 2 out of the 3 of them. They opted in, I should say, for 2 out of the 3 of them. Or no, they had 3. They had Torah. Because they have Torah, there's no sword, which is option 1 off the table. But there was abundance. Now this abundance could have undermined their choice for Torah, which would lead them back to option 1. God forbid, the sword. So there's a kind of trade-off going around. I have to develop this thought a little bit more, but something lies there.
What did they do with their cattle? How did they know which cattle was what? Did they have fence
I suppose.
beside their tents?
Ask historians, but I assume people had fences, sure.
Well, they must have hundreds of cattle.
You raise cow, I raise sheep, and we'll barter. I suppose. And he raises corn, and we'll trade. And we'll trade. I don't know. Okay.
Piece of corn for
Yeah.
a cow.
Now the Gemara goes on to describe the prophecy with respect to what's going to happen when Sanhedrin goes down, and then the Jews will collect all their spoils. Remember, we talked about this last week. How God said He's going to give Sanhedrin to Chizkiah's hands, that Chizkiah can get the spoils. So here comes the prophecy about the Jews collecting spoils from Sanhedrin. So it says this: "For Osef Shchalchem, you'll collect your booty, your loot. Osef Hachasil, like the collecting of locust." What does this mean? So says the Gemara like this. The Gemara elucidates the conversation. Amar lahem Navi Yisrael. The prophet Isaiah tells the Jewish people, "Isfu shalchem, go collect your loot. You want Sanhedrin, go collect." Amar Loi, so they told him, "Livzois, should we each man go run and take as much as he can?" Which is sometimes the case, as a way of enticing soldiers to fight well. I tell them, you keep what you kill. Yeah. So whoever wants, go get. Or should we collect everything and divide it up equally between everybody? So Amalahem, so he told him, go collect like a lotus. The locust. Not lotus is something else completely. Locust. A locust, when they arrive, they don't have a convention and then split the booty. Locusts come and they take whatever they want. So likewise, you go collect. Just like the collection of those of the locust. Each one takes for himself. So to your booty, your loot, each of you take on your own. Amrullah, the Jews said, this is amazing. There's money there that belongs to the 10 tribes from the north. Right, Sanhedrin just destroyed the north. He took tons of their money, he took all of their money. So now when they conquer or when they win Sanhedrin, the money that they're taking belongs to their brethren. And they're worried about theft. Worried about theft. Which is an amazing thing. They're worried about theft of their essentially enemies for generations, decades. They're I don't know about enemies, but they're protagonists in the north for decades, and they're worried about stealing from them. So Amar Lahem, so the prophet tells them, Kamasek Gavim Shekik, like the onslaught of Gavim, which is another word for locust, which is a way of saying just keep on taking. But the word Gavim can mean something else, namely a pool or a cistern of water. This explains the Gemara. Ma Gavim Alalu, just like these cisterns of water, these pools of water. It's a pool of water. I'm not sure how to describe it. It's like a river flows, and then there's an indent in the water. It collects, makes a kind of lake, and the water keeps on flowing the other end. So it's a living water, which makes it a kosher mikveh. Is the main point, not a man-made pool. It's a natural pool. So ma gav malalu, just like these natural pools of water, a person who goes into them for the mikveh comes out, goes in impure, comes out pure. So too, money of the Jewish people, from the moment it has been put into or been taken by nations of the world, Miyatir becomes purified and you're allowed to take. Meaning to say, once a nation has been conquered by another nation, then the property now becomes this new nation. It's like international law that I believe is still true today. If the war was legit and you win the war, then what you gain is yours. Except for Israel.
Yeah. The exception to the rule.
Yeah. But that's the general rule of life.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's the rule of Torah.
Possession is 9/10 of the law.
Sorry?
Possession is 9/10 of the law.
Yeah. There's a rule, there's a word for it. There's a rule, there's a word for it, for this law. That if you win a legitimate battle, you get to keep whatever it is and it belongs to you, period. There's a word for it, but anyway.
If it's a war of self-defense.
If it's a war of self-defense, but even, yeah.
Not if it's a war of aggression, like.
Right.
It's a war of self-defense.
Right. At any rate,
everybody was living by the sword then. It's not like today where it's
Yeah.
just for Sanhedrin setting the rules.
Yeah, but we still live today by the results of previous wars. If we
No.
decided to rewind history and put everybody back to where they came from, then
And the Indians.
I don't know, you'd have millions and millions of people living in one town in Mesopotamia somewhere because their grandkids lived there, because their great-great-great-great-grandparents lived there once upon a time. I mean, that's just the way of the world. So the Gemara is saying that's the halacha too. The halacha is that once one nation conquers another nation, it belongs to them now. You conquer them, you take it, even though in the previous war it belonged to somebody else. So Sanhedrin conquered the northern kingdom. Whatever he took now belongs to Sanhedrin. When you win Sanhedrin, you're allowed to take whatever he has, even though it once upon a time lived to somebody else. And it's interesting, this comparison, and I'm putting this out there because it's open for interpretation, this comparison to specifically to a mikveh. It's like it's a positive thing, it purifies it. Even though the comparison in the halachic sense is that the status changes. You go into the mikveh impure, you come out pure, new status. So likewise here, the money goes from belonging to Jewish people, belonging to Sanhedrin, status changed. That comparison I get. But in terms of here, it's a positive change. You're going from impure to pure. And then here, it's like it's a negative change a bit. It's a change. It's a change in that you're allowed now to take you're now allowed to take the booty, the loot, but it's a negative change in that because you much prefer to belong to the Jewish people before, right? So, especially some of God's languages, as soon as it enters the land of, enters the hands of the nations of the world, miyatir, instantaneously becomes pure. It's just a weird language, or I shouldn't say weird. It's a puzzling language that requires some explanation. So I'm going to give a thought that occurred to me while learning this Gemara. I don't have it fully fleshed out yet, but just an idea. We know from Kabbalah, of course, that all of our interactions with the physical world around us is for us to elevate those things. Right? There's the Gemara which says, the same Gemara which says that 40 days before a person is conceived, and make an announcement, this person's going to marry this woman. Yeah. The same Gemara also says 3 things that are announced 40 days. This woman, this house, and this field. This woman, this house, this field. So there's the simple meaning is, you have a bigger house, smaller house, what kind of business you'll have. But the precise language is, not what kind of house you'll have, but this house. As if to say, there are physical things in this physical world, the bricks that are in your house, that have been assigned to you, your soul, because your soul is responsible to elevate those physical bricks. And what says this field, not just the metaphoric basis in like which business you'll have, but actually, this plot of land is your responsibility to elevate the physical desk in your office, and the physical chair, and all the rest of that. So perhaps what it's saying is like this: when the Northern Kingdom had possession of that stuff, it wasn't they weren't elevating it, but it was their responsibility to elevate it. That's why it belonged to them. So the Jews in the south are telling the prophet, are we even capable of elevating it? Are we even capable of elevating it? It wasn't allotted to us. It was allotted to them. For them to elevate it. It wasn't allotted for us to elevate it. It's not our chelka be'olam. It's not our portion of this world that we're responsible to elevate. So he says, once it goes into the hands of the non-Jewish people, in other words, it descended to such a low place, then now it's free for anybody to redeem it, including you. And maybe that's why there's the language of tir, the language of purification. That now, having gone through or put it this way, Sanhedrin's punishing, in air quotations, those in the north, or punishing / cleansing those in the north from their sin, now frees up their property for you to elevate. Maybe. This is a kind of kernel I have. And
creates an opportunity.
Yeah. In other words, because now they've gone through their teshuvah, if you will, now there's stuff that they were supposed to elevate, now you can go and elevate it. Maybe. Just putting that out there. And that's what the language of tir, comparing it to a mikveh. And I'll just conclude with this line, because our papa, like our papa said, it's actually in parentheses because there are those who take this out. But our papa said, Hashem tells the Jews that they're not allowed to conquer the lands of Ammon and Moav. But once Sichon conquered Ammon and Moav, it's the same principle. Now that Sichon conquered Ammon and Moav, it no longer belongs to Ammon and Moav, it belongs to Sichon. And there was no prohibition against the Jewish people conquering Sichon. The prohibition was only conquering Ammon and Moav. Now that Ammon and Moav have been conquered by Sichon, so now the Jews are allowed to conquer it. Same principle. Yeah, the same principle. Mikveh changes the status from impure to pure, and war changes the status of who owns what, and therefore the law changes according to the new status done by this war. Okay, God willing, some more on Sanhedrin's downfall and his almost success coming tomorrow, God willing. Everybody.